welcome to the second breakout room of day 4 at the 6th Virtual Spring Conference. Feel free to submit questions at any time using the Q&A chat found on the right-hand side of your screen. Today, I'm joined by Donald Moore, CEO and Director of Playfair Mining, George Ogilvie, President, CEO and Director of GFG Resources, sorry, not GFG Resources, but of Arizona Sonoran Copper Company, Sean Sampson, President, CEO and Director of EV Nickel, Brandon McDonald, CEO and Director of Fireweed Zinc, Nancy Curry, Vice President of Corporate Development at Kodiak Copper. Over the last 3 days, you've had the opportunity to watch these company presentations and pose questions to them. Today, we'll be addressing not only those questions, but also any that come in live. Again, ask those questions using the Q&A chat found on the right-hand side of your screen. But that being said, let's get started today. So the first question is to the whole group. Between inflation hedging, green industrial demand, and a nuclear market about to realize its need for fuel, the basic materials sector is poised for growth and has historically outperformed other sectors during recessionary periods. So the question is, what are your predictions for the metals and mining industry for 2022? I'll be happy to hear from anyone who has any thoughts on that, as you have them.
Well, I'm happy to jump in there, Cam. Well, look, I think you touched on the key points. History tells us that in an inflationary period, typically commodities do extremely well. I think with the supply chain issues that we've seen from COVID and we're going to continue to see exist for quite a while yet. And then obviously with the conflict that's going on in Ukraine and Eastern Europe, I suspect that throughout 2022, we're going to continue to see rising commodity prices. There will be volatility, but overall, I think it looks extremely promising. And then if you go beyond that, I think there's going to be certain commodities, if you look particularly to the green energy, the renewable energy sector, the whole decarbonization thesis, that's going to be accelerated. We're already seeing in Europe, there's a drive to, rid themselves of dependency on Russia as far as hydrocarbons are concerned. Germany's already signing, applications for LNG plants. France is talking about building nuclear reactors. So I think it's not just 2022, but I think the next 5 to 10 years, we're really coming into a bullish commodity cycle, particularly for commodities that are associated or going to be required for the green energy, renewable energy sector.
Yeah, I would expand on that a bit and say that the last couple of years look, it's all these extenuating circumstances after extenuating circumstances, but what it's really highlighted is the fragility of the metals markets. We might get through whatever the current crisis is, but it's pretty apparent that these are metal markets that cannot withstand even a minor crisis, that supply-demand balances are razor thin, and that there's been a chronic underinvestment in supply, which is, of course, where we come in. And you look to the future as George has, and you think about, okay, now we're got underinvestment in supply. We have a real supply crisis, but we're going to have concurrent with that, in the demand side, a substantial investment in green technology and energy generation. You've got substantial infrastructure investment coming as a result of COVID stimulus. And then you've got probably the thing that people are not accounting for, significant resource nationalism, as well as significant restocking to account for supply chain difficulties. So all of this is going to, add up to a real hurt on the supply side, with outstanding demand on the demand side. So prices really are set to go ballistic here.
And I think if you add to that political security or the jurisdictional safety, I think the current conflict has really highlighted people, investors, are going to focus on making sure, or projects and development are in jurisdictionally safe zones.
Yep.
Go for it, Sean.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think that the decarbonization trade is just going to be accelerated as we're going to go into a forced shift where big parts of the Western economies are going to be repositioning themselves. And I think it's just going to be an opportunity for them to accelerate the move towards the decarbonization. So my metal nickel is somewhat interesting because it has a whole new demand category coming on in an industry which was already struggling with the supply-demand balance, and a whole new category coming. And even within the metal, whether it's the split between class one and other, and there's just going to become more and more of a focus to low carbon production of our metal. So I think overall the metal price deck is headed for good territory, whether it's all of these incoming. I don't see any of the big macro moves on the horizon being something that's bearish for the metal deck.
It's nice to agree with everybody on the panel on everything that they're saying. I further think that the next 20 years, not 30, maybe 30 years, George, is going to be good for all us guys in the metal game. Some of us will be around to see the end of it. Some of us won't. But in the meantime, I think it's going to be really exciting. We got involved with nickel ourselves. We have a nickel project or a deposit in Norway as part of our RKV copper project. And it was drilled by Falconbridge back in the 70s. So I understand the importance of this market. This market has gone bonkers, and it should help us all get the money that we need to do the exploration that has to be done in order to make this greening of the planet work. So we all have to work towards not only production, but to greenfields exploration to come up with new areas. And that's where we've kind of settled in on in the greenfields area. So I think there's a bright future for all of us involved in this game.
No, absolutely. No, wonderful. Well, I think that's a great start, but I'd like to go also around the horn asking the group, what catalysts specifically, going more to the short term, what catalysts are you looking forward to most this year? Brendan, I'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, this year, look, it's for us specifically, we're just, closing off a $10 million financing with tech, as well as our big PE background, Australia, Ibera Capital. So look, it's going to fund a lot of drilling, and then into a resource update and updated PEA next year. I think this, for us is a critical venture or point in time where we're going to be publishing a study that I think is going to catch a lot of people by surprise in terms of the scale and economics of it. So it's go time for us, in terms of catalysts. It's a very catalyst rich year. This is how it works with junior mining companies. You get drill results every year, and then it comes time to put your big boy pants on and do some studies. That makes for a very involved and big year for the company.
I have a similar start. We're in the process of closing financing that'll bring about $18 million into Kodiak once that closes. And we have lots of targets to test, so catalyst rich on discovery potential. The market really reacted. It was a transformative event when we discovered the Gate Zone, and we have 10 other targets to test that have very similar potential. So I think this year we'll have a lot of news from the drill bit.
Yeah, I can jump in there next. And, I think for Arizona Sonoran, we've obviously got a pre-feasibility study, which is underway. That'll come out in the late summer of this year. We're looking at an increased production profile over and above the PEA that we put out last year, which was 28,000 short tons of copper cathode production annually. I think the PFS is going to be pushing somewhere between 30 to 40,000 short tons. So that's quite a significant increase. And then next door to the main Cactus mine, we've discovered a new deposit known as Park Salia. We've got 6 holes drilled into that deposit. I think the best intersection we had was 600 feet of about 1.3% total soluble copper. And we would anticipate by the end of the year, we'll have drilled out a maiden resource on that would be added into probably the bankable feasibility study then on the Cactus project. And I would expect by that point in time, the global resource would be in excess of 5 billion pounds of copper actually in the ground.
Well, Playfair's Easy. It's discovery. The only thing that's going to give us a good catalyst is discovery. We've got a great project to work on. We got 30 kilometers of prospective geological ground with tens of miles of mag-EM targets. We've used AI and MMI to narrow down those targets to try find the low-hanging fruit that's just below the overburden. And we're drilling those targets this summer. We got a half a dozen to drill. We've got our driller ready to go. As a means of getting going over in Norway, we actually had to buy our own drill. It's a man-portable drill, and that's ready to go now. So we're looking forward to a great summer. But discovery all the way. We have two deposits on the ground now that we'll talk about at later times. One is a nickel deposit I mentioned earlier. Another is Porsche Hole, which is an unknown asset at this time that was worked on back in the early 1900s. Apparently, according to NGU geologists back in the 40s, a couple of million tons of 2% copper there. And we're looking forward to getting on that, but it is in landscape protection area. So all of these things could lead to a way forward for all of us in Playfair.
And then at EV Nickel, we are hoping to close next week on our transaction, which triples our land package. So I think in terms of catalysts this year for EVNI, we've got 2 drill rigs that are going to be drilling, and I hope to find more and more nickel in the ground, and we'll start putting together the business story around getting it out and producing.
Wonderful. Okay, well, it sounds like an exciting year that we're all looking forward to. Now we're going to be entering into the portion of today's panel where we'll be taking not only the live questions that are coming in, but we'll also be reviewing and answering the questions that have been coming in over the course of the conference. So to begin with, I'd like to start with you, Don, and Playfair. What's the Norwegian government done to support the mining industry in the country so far, or to date?
Well, first of all, Norway has been endowed with great oil resources, and they've been feeding on those for the last 50 years. Half a century or so. So the mineral industry over there kind of went to the back burner. But even during that time, the NGU, the Norwegian Geological Survey, has kept immaculate records. And those records, which include core storage, geophysical maps, showings, all of these geochem indicators, they're all there for all of us to look at. You can go over there into the NGU website and you have a marvelous feast of information to play with. And the government of Norway decided a couple of years back to move towards the mineral industry to try and supplement their declining oil involvement. And in so doing, they sent over DMF. That's the state organization that controls all the licensing for minerals in Norway. They sent them over to Canada. They had them at the PDAC. They're promoting Norway as a place to go and work, and they want us there. So that DMF has been very supportive in all aspects of getting us going. There are issues in Norway that still have to be sorted out. For instance, the Minister of Industry is the only person to go to for mining related stuff. They're working on getting mining to be a higher profile in Norway. So overall, they're moving towards a better environment. There's still things that they're doing that have to be done in terms of some of the different jurisdictions, some of the rights that different people and organizations have to be worked around. But that's all taking place. In fact, this coming week, next week, the first mining conference that I know of in Norway in something like 50 years is going to be happening. I'm going to have the privilege of going over. Minister of Industry will be talking there. So all of a sudden, mining is starting to take a bigger hold in Norway. The thing they have going for them really is the geology. A lot of people don't realize, but Norway created the copper that fed the Industrial Revolution. So our piece of property has production going back to the 1600s and as late as the 1900s. There's been like 80 million tons of ore taken out within 75 kilometers of where we are. So there is a history, and that has not been looked at for 50 years. So guys like us can come along and we got a feast on this geology that's there for the taking. And it's up to us to be innovative enough to see if we can come up with discovery. And that's what we intend to do.
Well, thank you for that, Don. George, about you in Arizona, Sonora, and what's the progress on the OTC listing?
Well, we've made the application, and the word back from our lawyer just this week was we're probably about 2 to 3 weeks away from being able to trade on the OTCQX. So we should expect that to happen, therefore, in early April.
All right, then. Okay. Now over to Brandon Fireweed Zinc. How does your logistic cost compare to other zinc companies?
Depends which ones you're talking about. Like, I think that there's no escaping the fact that we're a reasonably remote project, right? We have the benefit of a road now, so in terms of logistics for exploration, it's not that bad. It's not a fly camp or anything like that. We're not spending oodles on helicopters bringing in camps. For production, yeah, look, it's 800-kilometer drive to port. That probably puts us in the worst quarter, I guess, of zinc mines in terms of distance to tidewater. It's to my mind, if this project was 200 kilometers from port, it'd be a hole in the ground, right? So the opportunity for us is that I think there was naysayers about that, and we put wrapped economics around it, and it's a material, right? But it's not when you're as big and as high grade as we are. It's well offset by that. I think we're still going to end up being a second quartile cost producer despite the remote location, just because of scale and grade.
Oh, fair enough. Thank you. Sean, with EV Nickel, when do you expect to start production and produce cash flow? And do you have any blockers at the moment?
Yeah, sure. We have lots of blockers. We're just exploration. So we've got a resource on the books. We're hoping to grow that by leaps and bounds as we drill. We've got a line on potential local processing, but we'd have to get on the queue for permitting and stuff like that. So we're really an earlier stage company than talking about production with an actual genuine timeline. But we're within 50 kilometers of Timmins, and it's the kind of place with the grades that we have that has been historically mined. So we do want to be on that track as soon as we can. But the name of the game right now in 2022 is to be finding as much nickel as we can in the ground. And then that just positions you better for a production story from there.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Sean. And Nancy, in regards to Kodiak, the question is, will there be a massive expansion in the upcoming drill program, especially considering that Kodiak's sister company, Great Bear, has been acquired? And, this question asker is, saying that all the focus should then go to Kodiak as a result?
Well, we're definitely getting a lot of attention, having Chris Taylor as the founder and chairman of Kodiak. We have planned a 25,000 meter drill program on our MPD project, which is in central British Columbia. That will cost approximately $10 million. So with this financing closing, we should be able to have the opportunity to ramp up, but it will all, it'll all be driven by the drill bit. So we put out geophysics the beginning of February on the gate zone, which is our discovery. And it was the first time we had done deep IP geophysics, and we did it across the gate zone where we had been drilling a copper and soil anomaly. And what it really showed us, and we could correlate all our drilling, so we've drilled almost a kilometer in strike, is where we're hitting the much higher grades is in the north end and the south end. And that correlates really well to high chargeability resistivity in the geophysics we saw. And in the center portion where it became a chargeability low, the grade sort of dropped. But what it showed at 300 meters is the actual anomaly or chargeability is bending. And we now refer to it as the pink banana. So we'll basically turn the drills around and drill east towards that chargeability. And that's where we'll start. And then what came out of that survey is 600 meters to the east is a lookalike target never seen before. Never seen before. So that will be the secondary target. So the first half of this year will be focused on Gate and the second target. And then the second half will be on Dillard Man Axe 1516, where you had historic drilling, shallow, but no one tested to depth. And that's where we found the higher grade mineralization on Gate. So we'll start off in May doing deep IP on some of those targets because it looks to be a really good drill targeting tool for us.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Nancy. Don, another question for you, and another one about Norway. You talked about its history and where they've been, where they're going, but are they throwing up any roadblocks, or rather, are they throwing up too many roadblocks for your drill campaign that you're running?
It doesn't where us explorationists go. We have to find a way, not an excuse. So yes, there's lots of roadblocks that we have to jump over. But the nice thing about Norway right now is that they're working on a lot of those roadblocks. They're trying to lower the bar. The state stands behind us 100%, but there's all kinds of other levels of government that have power over access. As far as the rest of it goes, it just comes down to the access. So we found a way to get around all of those other issues by using a man-portable drill. Not only does it get around those issues, it allows us to be very green out there. So we can say we're one of the greenest exploration groups out there at the moment. And in Norway, that counts. They are very outdoorsy people, and they want to protect their reindeer. They want to protect their trails, their lakes, everything. And they don't yet understand what modern mining is all about. When they look at the mining district there, they see the past, and it is ugly. There's some really bad stuff that was left over from the mines in the 1600s and the 1700s and the early 1900s. And we're the guys that are paying the price for that because they look at us like we're pariahs, and we're not. So we have to overcome all those things. So as I say, you look for a way, not an excuse. And I'm sure that with this new Minister of Industry coming to a mining conference, that's a real big signal that they're really going to take this serious. This is the first time that I've known about. I can't swear that it hasn't happened before in the last 50 years, but it's something new for us to be optimistic about. So yes, I think Norway, with its endowment of untouched, unlooked at geology, with all of these targets, with a state that wants to see them worked on and developed, I think we're in a really good spot.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. George, this next question comes in for you in Arizona Sonoran. Are results coming in for the diamond drill holes?
Yes, we finished the infill diamond drill program on Cactus for the PFS in early January of this year. And we've got a suite of holes which have come back on that, and those will be announced probably some juncture by the middle of April. That will then complete all of the infill drilling that'll go into the new resource updated model ahead of the PFS, and obviously the declaration of maiden reserves. And then we've got a couple of additional holes out on Park Sailor, and we should anticipate to have those results back in early April, whereupon we'll also announce those results the middle of next month. So yes, the drill results are coming in a little bit slow. Like all areas, the assay labs are fully backed up, and they've got a hell of a lot of work ahead of them. And of course, in an assay lab, if you have a COVID case, you just can't go out on the street and pull somebody in off the street and expect them to become a qualified assay technician overnight. There's quite a substantial training program. So I know the assay labs, particularly here in the US of A and Arizona, Nevada, Utah, have been suffering of late with COVID cases.
Thank you, George. Next question is for Nancy and Kodiak. Why would you want to drill an IP high anomaly? Won't this mainly get you pyrite?
Well, see, we're very fortunate because we did this deep IP survey after we had done a lot of drilling. So we can correlate where we were hitting the higher grade to the survey. So I will disagree with that person because we are hitting bornite mineralization, like we just put out hole 29 and hole MPD 04, the discovery hole. You know, these are in that higher chargeability zone of the survey. So it's actually, because we had already had so much drilling done, we could correlate the new geophysics and really match it up against where we were drilling and what we were drilling. So we view it as a extremely valuable tool moving forward.
No, fair enough. Absolutely. Another question for Playfair. Why do you need to use a helicopter to move a small drill rig? What's the expenses like for that? Is it too expensive?
Well, first of all, let's go back to find a way, not an excuse. There's a big bit of elevation to get into the Cletton drill target in about a 3.5 kilometer hike. Lots of ups and downs. Helicopter just makes sense for Cletton. So we've got a license that's tentatively set from July the 15th to August the 15th, whereby we'll be able to move our drill into the site and let it do its job. We figure we can get done there within a month and then move it out of the site to our next target. So it's from a practical point of view, it's the only way we can get in there that makes any sense, unless there's other off-road permits and stuff, which may not be for years. So right now, the way we can get in and test that is to use a chopper. Yes, it's expensive, but so is man-portable expensive. But this is the way we're going.
No, and that's fair enough. Absolutely. George, when this year can people or investors be expecting a resource estimate?
Well, there'll be an updated resource estimate on the main Cactus project at the back end of the summer with the delivery of the pre-feasibility study. And then at the end of the year, there'll be a maiden resource which will come out on the Park Salia project. Because it's within 2 kilometers of the main Cactus project, it cannot go out as its own independent technical report. It'll have to be included either in an updated PFS or the bankable feasibility study at the end of the year.
Fair enough. Thank you. This question is for the whole group now. With COVID restrictions lifting, what impact, if any, do you see it having on the industry this year or in the coming years? And feel free, anyone, to hop in on that.
It was a big issue for us the first year because of camp capacity, right? So, we had a permit up to a certain amount of people and we had beds for those amount of people, but there was no double occupancy, right? So people weren't sharing rooms because of COVID. So suddenly what was a 50+ person camp became a 25 person camp. So we had to add additional, tents or trailers to accommodate more people. With restrictions lifting, it gives us a bit more breathing room in camp for sure. But, I don't think it necessarily magically changes the threat of COVID, although hopefully new variants and with vaccination, it's just less of a big deal. I definitely think, the hope is, George is talking about labs and stuff like that. The labs with lifted restrictions, hopefully putting more people in a smaller place. I know in the first year they had all the space between people, so not every workstation and what have you bench was occupied. So hopefully the reduced restrictions impacts our partners as much as us.
And I think with restrictions lifting, I agree with Brandon that it should hopefully speed things up and let things move a little more smoothly. But if something came up, another variant, we're all used to it and we all know what to put in place quickly. So I think we'll be able to be nimble and flexible and figure out how to keep everything going. Like the exploration and mining companies, I don't think that we've put out more more money's been raised in the last couple of years with COVID and drilling. So I think the companies will be able to deal with whatever is coming, and hopefully nothing is.
And I think as an industry, we've actually did extremely well in managing the COVID situation. I think as an industry, we need to tout our horn a little bit more as we know, in the mining and exploration industry, it's very heavily regulated. Health and safety, protocols, regulations are extremely high on everybody's, business protocols. And I think in actual fact, other than a few small cases, I think overall, the exploration and mining industries did a great job in managing the COVID situation.
Yeah, Playfair had a special situation last year. Not only were COVID restrictions on the border, there was restrictions for Canadians. Canadians couldn't get into Norway, and that created a bit of an issue. However, we were very fortunate. We have Radar Gopas. He's our representative in Norway. He's a learned man. He's been around the country, and he's been a wonderful asset to this effort we're making in exploration. He knew nothing about mining at all, and he's growing into the role so well. He helped us get by the COVID rules. He came up with dispensation so we could get our drillers in there and get going on the drilling. He got dispensation for myself to come over and see some of our investors last year. Now that COVID is backed off, Norway has opened its doors. They're wide open. There's no restrictions at the moment. But having a person like Radar over there is invaluable to us. It makes our challenges over there a lot easier.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a wide-ranging topic. We have a question coming in for Fireweed Zinc. Why another $10 million right now? The last $5 million raise was so recent.
Yeah, well, so there was the last $5 million raise was timed when it was, and it actually ended up being very good timing considering how the junior market kind of imploded in December and January. That was strictly about drill availability, really. We raised $5 million. It was enough to secure guarantee us some program and start locking down contractors. But the intent had always been kind of to maybe top up the balance sheet a bit strategically. And what we looked at particularly was, trying to decide, okay, so we've got a resource update coming and we've got a updated PEA coming. Additional money helps these things. But does the marginal dollar buy more resource and NPV than it causes dilution? That's the big concern, right? Because if you're diluting 20% to add 10% value, that's not such a swift move, right? So what we found is that we think for every 1% we dilute, we're getting about 4 or 5% value in the resulting study. So it was decided that, okay, look, let's take a look at what we can reasonably accomplish this summer and put together the best studies we can next year. And particularly when the 3 lead orders, the 3 total orders so far for what we opened with on the financing, accounted for the entire 10 million, and we're as sticky as investors as we're going to get. I think if we had gone to, thrown ourselves at the mercy of the most aggressive flow through funds, that would be a different, problem, right? In terms of what the eventual blowback on that would be. But we're pretty confident with both what this value is going to, or what these dollars are going to deliver, and the strength of the shareholders that are coming in on it.
All right. Well, thank you. Question for the group again, going around the horn. What's the thing that most investors are surprised to learn about your story? George, love to hear from you in Arizona Sonoran to begin with.
Thanks for that, Cam. Well, look, I think in Arizona, the state has taken a little bit of a black eye in recent years with permitting. It's always a hot topic, and I think people have obviously looked at the Rosemont project, and in particular Hudbay, and the difficulties they've had over the last 10 years in getting that project permitted. So when we present the corporate presentation and run people through the business model, and we say to them that we're entirely on private land, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have did their jurisdictional delineation survey, and there's no federal regulators involved, and therefore that completely simplifies the permitting process. I think that surprises them a little bit. But, the company acquired this asset, the Cactus Mine, 2 years ago from a state trust. We already have a permit to take water for the next 50 years. And we already have what's known as an aquifer protection permit, but only for the surface stockpile. And I would say probably by the end of this month, we're going to have the amended aquifer protection permit, not just for the surface stockpile, but also for a pit layback that allows us to mine in the pit. And there's an underground component as well. And from the date of application, when our application was administratively accepted, until the award of the permit in the next 2 weeks, that entire process will have taken 5 months. So when we start to walk investors through the remaining permits, the construction and development permit, the mined land reclamation permit, which are key permits for us that we'll apply for in the next 2 months, and we'll have those by the end of the year, I think they're very surprised that we can get these permits so quickly. But it all comes down to private land, no federal nexus, only dealing with state regulators and local municipal authorities.
No, fair enough. Nancy, what about you and Copper, or Kodiak Copper rather? What are investors surprised about to hear?
That's a good question. I think we've been very clear on what the objective of the company. So it's, we have really great infrastructure. ESG has always been important from day one. It is about discovery. So I'm sitting here thinking like we're constantly telling the market what we're doing, trying to keep a very tight share structure, as Brandon said, very sticky investors. So all the discovery transformative effect it can have will go into the company. So I'm sorry, I can't really think of a surprise to the market.
It's okay. Sometimes being surprising isn't the best thing, right?
Yeah.
Brandon, what about you and Fireweeds Inc. though? Is there anything surprising?
With Fireweed and the McMillan Pass project, you're managing historical impressions of the project, because the deposits we have there, the Tom deposit was found in 1951, the Jason deposit in the 70s. So many geologists and engineers have been through there over the years that there's all these preconceived notions. It's like, oh, the metallurgy is challenging, and it's like, well, yeah, SEDEX metallurgy was challenging until they invented the ISA-mill in the 80s, right? And now it's very, very different, right? You're like, oh, okay, well, Tom makes a lot of water. It's like, yeah, because they drifted right through the major fault because they hadn't mapped it, right? And it's like, oh, well, there's limited upside at Tom and Jason. It's like, well, we published our first study, grew at 60%, right? And then, so you're managing, getting people out of, I said, this is not your father's project, right? Like you gotta stop thinking about it, about how it was in the 70s and 80s. And then the next thing, you got to kind of convince them, look, there's a whole district here. And when we bought the project, there was this dogma that Tom and Jason were the same stratigraphic horizon, and that these deposits were stratigraphically bound, that they were SEDEX, that this is exhalative. And so they were sedimentary. They were formed when the sediment was deposited. So they were necessarily on that one horizon. What we understand now is they're not actually exhalative at all. They're replacement. They're really better termed, shale hosted base metal deposits. And that Tom and Jason are not the same horizon. So that's 2 mineralized horizons. There's at least 4 more mineralized horizons over a strike distance of 30 to 40 kilometers. So people who have this vision of like, oh, we understand that project, when first you have to kind of talk them out of their preconceived notions and get them to kind of disavow everything they thought they knew about these styles of deposits. But once you do that, it kind of blows their mind what we're working with there. It's really, really massive upside.
Oh, that sounds exciting. And over to you, Don. It's exciting. What's going on that's exciting or surprising in Norway?
Well, exciting and surprising. Well, first of all, I think just generally speaking, us explorationists don't realize how much potential there's left over there in Scandinavia. Finland has come to light just in the last few years as a place to look for gold, and there's some of the greatest gold deposits are emerging out of the ground as we speak. Canadian companies like Agnico Eagle are over there with the largest producer of gold. 20 years ago, no such thought. So all of a sudden, we have an interest in Scandinavia. Norway itself has been, as far as exploration goes, has been dead for 50 years. So it's a huge opportunity to go in, on areas that are well documented, geological or environments that can produce these deposits, and none of them have really been looked at. And when you take tens of miles of mag-EM targets, any given one of them could be a worthwhile deposit. But there's so many, you have to come up with a way to narrow down that scope. So for a little company with such a low market cap like Playfair to have such a big project, I think would be a surprise for anybody that really wants to look at it.
All right, fair enough. Well, listen, folks, as we begin to wrap up for the day, I do have a final question I'd like to pose to each of you going around the room one more time. If an investor could walk away knowing only one thing about your story, what should it be? What's that key element? I'm going to go right back to you, Don.
Well, the big thing we have right now is a very small market cap relative to the project. We're going to be doing a financing here in the next while. Anyone who's interested in it can contact me one way or another, and I'll put you on the list if you're interested in participating. Don't have a price tag yet, but I'm not a bit concerned about raising a bit of money here. We have very solid shareholders, individual high net worth guys in the mining game, EMX, who we did the deal with, some funds in Norway, and ourselves. Over 50% of the stock in Playfair is tied up in what we call good hands. It's a really liquid stock. It's been around for a long time, same management. And, it's come and have a look.
Oh, fair enough. Brendan, over to you in Fire Week.
Yeah, I guess, if investors come away with one thing is to take a look at the 2018 resource in the context of global undeveloped zinc projects, and then think about what's changed since then and what impact that would be and where we sit within that peer group. Not just undeveloped, but active mines even, I think. And when investors are able to frame just how big this district is and just how rich it is, and you think about, okay, what would that mean in the context of perhaps a more popular metal, a gold or a copper? You start to understand, like, this is a very unique and rare opportunity, right? So these things transact for very big dollars when you get into that rare air, right? So that's what investors kind of have to frame is that this is not just a junior with a zinc project. This is the junior with the zinc project.
All right, fair enough. Nancy, you and Kodiak Copper?
I think investors, in the premise of the Kodiak Copper's MPD project was, this is a multi-porphyry center district. It was historically drilled. We believe they had drilled too shallow. And in 2020, when we made the Gate Zone discovery, it sort of proved that model. We had increased significantly the size of that discovery, and we're about to test multiple other targets. So our confidence moving forward that we are going to make similar discoveries is what investors should be looking at.
All right, thank you. And George, over to you with Arizona Sonoran.
Yeah, thank you, Cam. I would say, obviously near-term copper production on private land in Arizona with massive exploration potential on a district scale.
Okay, nice, short and simple. Well, listen, folks, I really appreciate you all coming on today and joining us for this breakout room. Those are all the questions that we have for today. So I'd like to thank not only you, but everyone else who's joined us as attendees, especially those who have asked questions of you. As a reminder, if you'd like to book a meeting with any of the speakers that you see here now or throughout the rest of the conference, you can do so using the link stickied at the top of the chat, which can also be found on our site, going to the conference page, and then navigating to the meetings tab. Join us again for the final breakout session of our conference starting in 1 hour at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you there.